Congressman Joe Kennedy joins us now. Congressman, thanks for coming on the show. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Well, Tuesday is primary day, September 1st. What is your final pitch to voters?
Look, this is it. And it comes down to the fact that I believe that you deserve more from our senator. This is a critical moment for our country. It's a moment of reckoning and a moment where I believe we're capable of so much more. But that change doesn't just happen. It happens because people go out there and make it happen. And I have seen families across our Commonwealth that are fighting for each other, fighting for their families, for their own futures every single day. And I think you deserve a senator that's going to fight as hard for you as you're fighting for them every moment. That's what I'll bring. That's what I'll do. And I look forward to Tuesday and ask for your vote.
No Kennedy has ever lost an election in Massachusetts. That will not be news to you. The polls had initially shown you with a commanding lead. The latest Globe poll shows you behind. Why do you think that is?
Look, I think taking on a 47-year incumbent is always a challenge. And I always knew that this was going to be a challenge. I did it anyway because I think that it's worth it. Because when I got in this race over a year ago, we were seeing a stock market that was setting records, yet 500,000 people were going homeless every night and 37 million were going hungry. The largest providers of mental health care in our country are the jails in Los Angeles and Chicago. And I believe we're capable of so much more. And I believe that then. And if anything, it's gotten a whole lot worse since then. And so I don't think that we can just sit there and hope for change and think that if you sign on to the right bill, then eventually it's going to come to pass. How do you sit there and tell people just to continue to try to make it through the day? How do you tell people that you hope that at some point things will get better for them, but not throw everything you've got at it? And that's what I've done over the course of this campaign, and that's what I hope to do in the Senate.
Let's get into some of the issues facing voters right now. And first, the Postal Service. We've seen some major delays in mail delivery as the president's Postmaster General has made some changes in policy there that have caused those delays. What are you doing to try to fix it?
Look, this is just an absolute complete undermining of our democracy by the president and Postmaster General DeJoy. He needs to be held to account, and the Senate needs to act. The House of Representatives has now passed two separate bills to provide funding that the Postal Service requested, not Democrats requested, the Postal Service requested, to ensure that that they could continue to function at the level that we expect, not just for an election. But obviously, keep in mind, Liam, that the Postal Service is the way that for a lot of our families, that they get prescription medication delivered, they get paychecks in the mail, they get unemployment benefits, they get critical information from the VA, Veterans Affairs. This is a central tenet to our democracy. And the president is so afraid of what will happen if people are able to vote by mail and that our democracy functions, that he's willing to undermine our healthcare sector, our economy, and the basic ways in which our society functions, just because he doesn't want people to vote. He needs to be held to account. The Senate needs to pass these provisions to protect the Postal Service and fund them the way that they need to make sure that our democracy works and that people get the mail.
In the Massachusetts primary, the mail-in ballots have to arrive at the clerk's office by September 1st or they will not be counted. So what are you telling your supporters given the mail delays?
Look, I think it's a critical piece, I think, of information there that you just highlighted for everybody, because I think a lot of folks think, hey, if it's postmarked by September 1st, that's going to be enough. It's not. And so what I would tell people, particularly now, if you want to vote by mail, if you finally got your ballot at home, walk it down to the local drop box, not necessarily the PO box, not the blue box, but every city hall, every city and town across the state actually has a vote by mail receptacle. You can drop it off and hand deliver it there. You can hand deliver it into the clerk's office. I would tell you to go do that certainly now, given the delays that we are seeing in Postal Service. And I think it is, I know there's a candidate for Congress in the current district that I represent that has filed a lawsuit to try to extend that window so that ballots can be counted. And I think Becky Walker-Grossman brings up some really critical points in that lawsuit as well.
So do you support that lawsuit, the move to push the Secretary of the State to allow the ballots to be postmarked by September 1st because of the delay?
Look, I think that definitely needs to be on the table. And Liam, I've been one of the folks that have pushed for vote by mail accommodations literally for months on the basic premise that in Massachusetts, we should be expanding access to the ballot, not limiting it. And you certainly need to do that in the midst of a global pandemic. I think nobody really could have foreseen the obstacles that the administration will put up to actually slow down the Postal Service. But given that, And given that I think we are seeing a number of folks that I've heard anecdotally that have had trouble with those mail-in ballots, I think additional accommodations are probably necessary.
Now, the House, as you mentioned, has passed $25 billion in funding for the Postal Service. The Republicans in the Senate say they're not going to vote on that specific bill. The same is true for the coronavirus relief bill that was passed by the House, $3 trillion. You voted for that. That was in May. What is the point of passing these bills if you know the Senate Republicans are not going to take them up?
A couple pieces here. One, you pass the bills because it's the right thing to do. You pass the bills because our country needs it. That's how the legislative process, I believe, is supposed to work. If Republicans want to choose to ignore the will of our people, particularly at a time of economic and public health crisis and in the midst of a critical presidential election, that's on them. But then it's also on all of us to try to raise the pressure on them to move. Because, Liam, the bottom line here is that as I've gotten out and about across our Commonwealth, people need relief. Families are terrified as to what's going to happen by the end of the week and the end of next week and the week after that. The number one issue across our state is what do you do with sending your kids to school? I've got two little kids, and my wife and I are still asking each other questions about what we're going to do. We obviously want our kids back in school, but to get the social and emotional learning, they're real little, but to get the social and emotional learning that they need to be with their friends, they haven't had that opportunity now for months. But no one wants them to go to school and to get sick or spread a novel virus. The federal government has resources here that can help, and Republicans are saying they don't want to deliver on. We need this money. We need these resources. People are clamoring for them. Small businesses need them in order to stay afloat. And so I think it's critical for the House of Representatives to hear the concerns of our people, to pass legislation that meets those concerns, and to make sure the American public knows that it's, in fact, our Senate Republican colleagues that are deciding not to provide Americans the relief that so many are looking for.
Let's get back into the Senate primary race here. Senator Markey has the endorsement of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. He touts his movement of what he calls millennials and Generation Z voters behind him. Is he the more progressive candidate in this race?
No, Liam, it's interesting. There's kind of two narratives in this race. One is you guys are both the same. What's the difference between the two of you? And the other is Senator Markey's a progressive candidate. Those two things can't both be true, right? You look at my record. I am a proud member of the Progressive Caucus. I am the head of the Transgender Equality Task Force in Washington, D.C., and I've led on transgender rights since I got there. I am a strong supporter of Medicare for All. I've led on healthcare since I got to Washington, particularly with regards to mental and behavioral health. I'm proud of the work that I've done to make sure that people get access to justice in our country, particularly when it comes to legal services. I put my progressive record up against anybody's, and including Senator Markey's.
Senator Markey will say you were slow on Medicare for All.
Senator Markey has said that. I would urge folks to look at the facts. The Medicare for All bill Senator references was filed for 12 years before he signed on to the bill. The bill that I signed on to, which I've been signed on now for years, the prior version of it had severe flaws. It didn't cover long-term care. It put up major obstacles for women to get access to abortion. It would have led to the closure of critical care hospitals around our state. I highlighted those challenges. I spoke with Pramila Jayapal, who took over that legislation recently. We worked together on making those accommodations. We filed new legislation, and I signed on to it. That's the way the legislative process is supposed to work. And again, I think for anybody to question my commitment for healthcare for all, that's one of the biggest reasons why I'm in this job and what I've been leading on since I got there.
I want to get into a bit of a more sensitive issue with you. Your campaign manager recently sent a letter to Senator Markey's campaign manager saying that you are receiving death threats nearly daily and accusing the Markey campaign of creating a dangerous atmosphere. Senator Markey's campaign manager responded that they have condemned any hateful messages toward you and that your campaign is, quote, choosing to end this campaign with crocodile tears. Your reaction to that?
Liam, I have a hard time interpreting what has been directed at my family, at me, at my supporters as crocodile tears. I think that is a stunningly out of touch statement for what has taken place over the course of this campaign, and an environment that Senator Markey's campaign has cultivated. And look, I respect the senator. We're in a heated campaign. That's fine. I respect the man. I do. And I know that he personally doesn't condone those things. I also know that this campaign has created an environment where it has been allowed to proliferate and to spread. And this is not a new thing. This is not something that's happened in the last week. This has been going on for months. And so for Senator Markey's campaign to all of a sudden say at this point that to try to minimize that and what has been directed at, again, my loved ones, family members, supporters, just supporters of mine, because they happen to support me now being subject to threats and bullying. That's not the type of democracy I think I believe in. It's not the type of progressive movement I believe in. It's not the type of politics I believe in. And I would hope that Senator Markey's campaign could say the same.
Do you worry about your safety?
Look, I don't think about it all that much. Every campaign I've ever run has been about being out with people. And that's harder to do, obviously, at the moment, but it's about handshakes and high fives and now elbow bumps and normally diners and living rooms, and trying to get that connection, because I don't think that you can try to represent people if you don't have a connection with them, if you are not present in their communities, if you're not listening to them and asking them questions and sharing those moments. And in order for me to do that, you got to be out and about. It's some of this is a sign of the times, and I don't hold Senator Markey accountable for every random tweet that happens on the internet. I do think that there's moments here where everybody needs to do better, and I think they know it.
Congressman Joe Kennedy, thanks for coming on WBZ this morning. We appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.